It's easy to claim the mainstream is trying to suppress alternative health. But in the case I'm about to show you, not only was it proven to be true, it was proven in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. Welcome to Maha Uncensored. If you haven't yet shared the film with a friend or posted on social media, please take a moment and do so right now, because you're about to see one of the biggest scandals in medical history, a scandal that proves beyond a doubt that mainstream medicine is actively trying to keep proven therapies from you and me. Once you see what these therapies are doing for Americans with injuries, chronic pain, and aging, you're going to realize how important they could be for you and your loved ones. I hope you enjoy.
Western medicine kind of started as tradition at the turn of the century in the response to quote-unquote quackery.
There has been a deliberate campaign to label anybody who doesn't sell or distribute drugs, surgery, or radiation as a quack.
Your dad's a quack, right?
Your dad's a quack.
My daddy says your daddy's a quack.
My dad said I'd sooner die in a normal fashion than see a quack.
He didn't know what a quack was. He just knew that his dad labeled my dad a quack.
You're quacks, and you're not.
I kind of thought chiropractors were quacks. I don't know why I thought that, I just did. And I think I was like the general public.
Chiropractors are bad, they're dangerous, quacks, pseudoscience. If you keep saying that often enough, people start believing you.
Medical insurance used to not pay for any chiropractic. I mean, in the day, it was like, forget it, it's quackery.
Quackery.
Quacks. Quacks and charlatans, etc.
Quacks!
Almost any time in history, go to Copernicus, go to Galileo, they were considered quacks at their time when they innovated futuristic ideas that were aligned with higher truths.
We were nuts. We were crazy. We were quacks.
My choices were exploratory surgery or a quack. I woke up the next morning and chose the quack.
If helping somebody with a natural approach to healthcare versus a addictive, potentially fatal approach is quackery, then call me a quack every day of the week.
Major reasons people come is still neck and back pain, but there's other issues that people get health results and holistic health results that are outside of that paradigm. Most people know that we do a great job once an injury's occurred and in the rehab side of things, but I really wish more people use chiropractic for prevention.
Millions of Americans swear by chiropractors, and many physicians swear at them, claiming that chiropractors are unscientific and potentially very dangerous.
For any letter that comes and send information about chiropractors, if you're going to go to see one, you better know what you're getting into.
The American Medical Association's sole purpose was to contain and eliminate chiropractic, and in an antitrust way, eliminate competition, so they were the only one, and they did everything in their power to discredit chiropractors.
The Chicago headquarters of the American Medical Association is the spokesman for the majority of its 110,000 doctor members, able publicist Dr. Morris Fishbein, who opposes any radical departure from long-established medical practice.
We insist that the practice of medicine is a doctor's problem. The doctor is the only one entitled by training, by experience, and by law to take care of the sick.
We chiropractors understood cancel culture way back when, decades ago before there was internet and social media. They were trying to cancel the profession, the medical profession, the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association, others, literally were found guilty of conspiring to contain and eliminate the profession.
There's a Supreme Court case called Wilk versus the AMA. It was an antitrust lawsuit to maintain a monopoly in healthcare for the medical profession, and their sole purpose was to exclude chiropractic, put it on a two-tier system, at least that still exists today, from insurance reimbursement, and to maintain a monopoly.
Did you take any steps to prevent chiropractic colleges from obtaining affiliations with state universities for their pre-chiropractic professionals training?
We certainly did. One of the important things that happened with Wilk versus the AMA was there was an insider called Sore Throat, and what they did is they pushed out documents, and what the AMA had done is they had actually included the American Dental Association, the American Hospital Association, radiography, and any medical doctor caught seeing a chiropractic patient and offering medical services could then lose their license and could also be banned by the AMA. So the humble approach by the chiropractors in the fields was to go at night under the cover of darkness and provide care for these people so that they wouldn't be blackballed.
Chiropractors in a group sued the American Medical Association and several of its constituent groups with individual doctors who were involved in discriminatory acts against the chiropractic profession, and they were found guilty.
Recently, chiropractic medicine scored a major victory in an Illinois court case against a medical association. This was a landmark that is changing the perception of chiropractic care in America.
I didn't know anything about chiropractic when I went to the AMA. I didn't know anything about chiropractor from an antelope.
I mean, they went to every known length to wipe out the profession, and miraculously, because of Chester Wilk, and specifically the attorney, George McAndrews, it really was a monumental win of the underdog overriding it. But this man, George McAndrews, lost everything but his family in the process and gained more dignity than we'll ever know because they attacked his father and he was going to set the record straight. It was atrocious what the American Medical Association did, and I'm going to tell you the dominance that they have politically hasn't changed too much.
The challenge was that even though we might have won that lawsuit, the damage was already done. Doctors were being told that it was unethical and in some cases illegal to refer to a doctor of chiropractic. In some other cases, they were promoting and doing propaganda to patients that they shouldn't see chiropractors because it was not safe.
I mean, if this guy pulled any longer or harder, these people would be dead.
Even though we have one of the lowest healthcare malpractice insurance in all of healthcare, we couldn't be more safer than any other healthcare profession. So after I witnessed that, I realized that we had to work really hard in our credibility, in our evidence base, in our studies that can showcase the value of chiropractic care. And that's what we began to do. We began to research. What is it that we really do? Our patients are telling us they're feeling better. Our patients are telling their symptoms are going away. What really happened? And that's what we've been in that journey since that time. And we have tremendous amount of research already accumulated over the years.
Medical doctors, medical professionals, I think, are very dedicated and want to help people, but they're born into a system where they're taught under the guise of an arrogant science that says we know better, we can command nature, we can manipulate your body through chemistry, and when that doesn't work, we can cut it open and do things to it. And the tools that they have at their disposal are sort of limited when it comes to wanting to help people.
Once we define the source of the pain, then the therapy's been developed through a series of integration of reflex systems to flip the switches back on. So we basically reinitialize that muscle system back into the central nervous system. It's like the body says, oh yeah, I remember that one. It's really important that those muscles fire in a proper sequence, and if the body's trying to adapt around a muscle imbalance due to an old injury, it affects your performance.
After my rookie season, I had back pain, it felt like all season, and went home and tried to physical therapy it and didn't get any better. And so last ditch effort, I got a hold of our team surgeon and he gave me a cortisone shot. And gosh, boy, that felt great until I got back to work. I mean, literally a week later, I'm back here in Utah trying to play in camp, and everything that was supposed to help just evaporated. So it wasn't working. So finally I said, well, maybe I'll try this goofy Bueller guy and see if he can help me. Within a couple minutes of a couple adjustments here, a couple adjustments there, it was like, wow, that doesn't hurt anymore. And why is that? And so that opened the door to saying, hey, maybe this guy isn't out there too far. So I limped in before a road trip one day to say, hey, would you just adjust my back? We're going on a road trip. And he said, sure. He goes, why are you limping? Hey, don't worry about it. It's tendonitis. It'll go away at the end of the year or something like that. And I'm taking anti-inflammatories for it. And he said, well, do you mind if I work on it? I said, you won't be able to find it. Nobody else can find it. And he touched me 5 spots down here in the leg. I about jumped off the table in pain. He says, well, that's your peroneus tertius, and I can fix that for you. I said, you can? 5 minutes later, I walked out of there pain-free. I mean, pain-free, not even an inkling of what that discomfort was. And I never looked back, and I don't believe, except for one surgery, I ever took an anti-inflammatory again. It was life-changing. once your eyes are open to that and you can see the power of your body's own ability to heal, if given the right tools, given the right supplements, you can do amazing things and keep you healthy for a long, long time.
When I went to chiropractic college, I learned basic sciences, and then I learned diagnostic tools, and then I learned therapies. So I learned all the technique, all the science, and then I got into practice and I tried to apply that. And it probably took me a good 5 or 6 years before I finally came to the realization that patients don't read the books I did. They don't respond the way the book said they were supposed to. So I had to get out of my head and start focusing on listening with my heart. I'm Dr. Craig Bueller. I'm a chiropractic physician, and I'm the developer of a technique called Advanced Muscle Integration Technique. It's a new cutting-edge approach to the assessment, diagnosis, and treatment of athletic injuries. And it started with Kendall and Kendall, two physical therapists who developed ways of testing muscles for function. And then it moved to a Dr. George Goodhart, a chiropractor from Detroit, Michigan, who started looking at the relationship between spinal nerve irritation and muscle dysfunction. And he began to use Kendall and Kendall's work to test muscles for function. And he found that patients, say with a winged shoulder or a winged scapula, once they were adjusted, the muscles that were weak that led to the winged scapula started working again. And that added another dimension of his treatment protocol.
We work with the nervous system on a daily basis. And according to our physiology books, the nervous system is the master system that controls and regulates every other system. So when you see a chiropractor, when you get a chiropractic adjustment, not only are you alleviating pain and inflammation, which tend to function through the nervous system, but you're also enhancing the activity of all of those organs that have nerve supply. So to me, I saw chiropractic as a great foundation of healthcare. Not the only thing that we do, but a great foundation of healthcare. And then now I realize that the new science, especially with neuroplasticity, is showing that not only is it helping us function better, but it's helping our brain adapt to our environment better. I have patients that have come to me because their levels of stress are so high that all of a sudden they receive a chiropractic adjustment and it lowers.
Very simply, that disease is complicated and health is actually simple. There's a couple key ingredients that if you do them, people will stay healthy. But once someone's ill and they're unwell, the amount of medications, the amount of complications, I don't envy the doctors that treat that, but I still don't understand why we don't go further upstream and get to the cause. We're always having a pill for the effect. And those pills then have side effects, but we've got pills for the side effects, and then we've got pills for those side effects. And nobody really knows the interaction of all of those pills within someone's body, so there's inherent risk to adding pills to persons that are already taking pills. It's a domino effect that just has no end in sight. Something different needs to be done.
This action is knee extension.
Dr. Alan Beardall was one of the chiropractors that became one of the original diplomates in the International College of Kinesiology. And Alan was an elite distance runner. And as a result, he saw distance runners from all over the country. And the frustration that he had was athletes would come in with various problems, and he would use the procedures that Dr. Goodhart had developed, and they would work, but as soon as the athlete got out to 2 or 3 miles, they would break down again. And Alan finally got the point, he said, you shouldn't have to treat the same thing twice. If you do, we're missing something. So that launched him into a whole process of investigation and clinical research. And so he began to pull different functions from the different techniques available and created a summary. And he found that as he summarized, problems that would take him 5 or 6 treatments to solve, he could solve in 1 treatment. And over the course of 10, 15 years, he created a body of work called clinical kinesiology.
I sprained my ankle bad. stepped off a plate holding 120 pounds in my hand backwards onto the handle of a kettlebell that I didn't know was there, and I heard the pop and fell to the floor with nausea and literally crawled to the freezer in the house to put ice on and figured I would just be pretty immobilized for the next 3 to 4 weeks. Woke up this morning to a phone call from my friend Jeff Hayes. He said, "You want to get this fixed?" And I said, "I've been trying to fix it. I've got the red light, I've got PMF, I got peptides, I've been throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it." And you said, "No, you want to get this fixed." So here I am. I'm open to all sorts of different forms of alternative medicine, functional medicine, things that go beyond just like rest, ice, compression, elevation. But a sprain like this, I just figured it's a couple of weeks of immobility, and you can't just like take a ligament and stitch it back together. I have to admit, when you told me that, I was, as much as I love and trust Craig, was a little skeptical about the ability to be able to do something like that.
Well, let me have you take off the brace and let's check it, see what you've got.
I think in many cases we have been led, due to largely financial interests, to believe that things like chiropractic medicine, certain dietary practices, just all kook science. And the idea that someone could take what appears to be a grade 2 ankle sprain and via some adjustments of the talus and the calcaneus and the fibular head actually take someone from crutches and a boot to walking, that would seem a little bit absurd and even frowned upon in many medical circles.
Okay, Ben, I want you to get up and walk on it.
Okay. Without the boot or anything?
Yep, without the boot. I want you to walk as normal as you can. The more you walk, the better it will feel. Okay? Try to walk over your toes.
Craig worked on me for about a half hour, and I got up off the table and I was walking. And I literally thought that I was going to be pretty immobile for at least several weeks. So what you can see and experience when you think outside your box, when you keep yourself open-minded, and when you consider the body to be almost like a self-healing machine that when placed in the right environment can heal a lot faster than you think and stay a lot healthier than you think.
6'4" Stephen Nyman taking on the time of Travis Ganong, who holds a narrow...
Alpine ski racing's a wild sport. It's raw. We're flying down a mountain on a thin metal edge on a sheet of ice. Like there's immense pressure, torque, a lot of risk. Like I'm wearing a spandex suit and a helmet, so things can go sideways fast, and they went sideways for me quite a bit. I've torn both Achilles, I've blown both knees, I've broken both legs, I've broken a ton of ribs, blown up both hands, but I've come back from all of those, and I'm completely fine right now. I have no issues, no pain. I look at a lot of my friends that I skied with, and they're struggling. To have found Craig and been a part of his work over all this time is a blessing. In 2004, I started working with Craig Bueller. I had broken my leg, and I had a rod put in, a rod removed. Basically, you have to do 30 seconds of single leg squats to get back on snow to qualify through the US ski team. And I couldn't do a single one. My knee was just in so much pain. I think there was a ton of scar tissue or whatever they were saying was the issue. I didn't know. I was on my last leg, and finally I went into Dr. Craig Bueller, and I walked out of there within an hour, pain-free, full-range single-leg squats, no problem. And I felt like I'd wasted the past year of my life doing traditional therapy methods.
So if you're really trying to restore function of the body, we've got to get outside of that allopathic or allopathetic model and start to look at what's optimal for people. Just getting it beyond pain isn't a true indicator of health. You can take opioids and not feel the pain. That doesn't mean you're healthy. Yet most Americans base their health how they look, how they feel.
I've had really bad accidents. I've been in some serious pain. And having those pain meds for a period of time to help me through that is a good thing. But living on Tylenol, living on Advil, you know what that's doing to your liver, you know what that's doing to your kidneys over time, how that's gonna make you sick. And then, oh, well, I guess when we get to that point, we'll deal with the liver problem when it comes, as compared to saying, we should find another way to heal you so you don't experience the pain. That's what your body's really crying for.
I practiced chiropractic for a couple of years and then realized that I wanted to do more in my practice. I wanted to really understand herbology, and I wanted to understand some of the prescription medicines to be able to integrate them in. And so naturopathy is really a very beautiful integration with medical, chiropractic, osteopathy, herbalism, homeopathy. It's like probably the most broad of all of the different subsets of natural medicine. It really benefits my patients for that training that I've taken within both chiropractic neurology as well as naturopathy, because the more experience that you have and the more tools that you have, it's like if you were to go to somebody that does construction and they have more tools, they would be able to build a better house. And so it's the same thing for a health provider. And you know, one of the complaints I hear a lot from my medical colleagues is that they're basically limited to these prescription medicines. And if they go off and they start doing things in natural medicine, they're basically crucified by their colleagues. The American Medical Association, you know, and their board, the state boards, they're very, very cruel to these doctors when they start engaging in anything that's holistic or natural, where in my profession, it's encouraged.
In your body is the ability, a power, if you will, to adapt, to heal itself, to self-regulate. In chiropractic, we say that happens through the nervous system. The nervous system is the master system and controller of that body. So if your body's not healing and regulating properly, something's interfering with the program. What we're going to try to identify is where that interference is, remove that interference, and allow your body to heal itself. Alternative medicine, as they like to call it, have become very popular. Medicine was working, they wouldn't be looking to go somewhere else. The reality is that's not working for a lot of people, and they're looking for a different solution.
I was obsessed with fixing my patients. I didn't want to band-aid them. I wanted to figure out what was really causing their problems. As time went on, I got better and better at communicating with the subconscious mind of my patients. I knew that no matter what a patient presented with, their subconscious mind knew what was really going on. And rather than looking at symptoms, I was looking for the true underlying causes of things. But most of the time, most people don't need drugs, and most of the time, most people don't need some kind of surgical intervention. And what I found were the things that actually were needed. In other words, the true underlying causes of people's sicknesses, and it was a surprise. And what I found absolutely astonished me, that physical pain was largely because of emotional baggage, trapped emotions. And I found that it became easier and easier for me and more simple to find and identify these emotional energies. And the fascinating thing is the subconscious mind knows exactly what emotional baggage a person has, when that emotional energy or when those energies were trapped, who was involved, what had happened, etc. Many, many years ago, Albert Einstein said, "The medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies." And I think when he said that, no one had any idea what he was talking about except probably his closest associates. And Nikola Tesla, even before that, said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. We're now at a point where the whole world is waking up and realizing, okay, Western medicine is great for a lot of things, especially at acute problems, but it isn't necessarily the best way to take care of ourselves in all circumstances. So if you're diagnosed with some kind of a disease, you may be doing everything else right. You might be taking all the right supplements, you might be getting your exercise, water, food, everything else, but if you miss the emotional component, everything else you're doing may not be enough.
Sometimes we're called alternative, and it's not true. We're different. And I think there's a proud history of being different, and we offer things uniquely specific to chiropractic that if medicine engaged in the process and actually referred like they should for the health of the patient, chiropractors would be helping a lot more people, and I think we'd have a lot less issues in healthcare within the sick care system, including things like the opioid crisis. 80% of heroin users got started with a prescription for opioids from their medical doctor. 59% of opioid prescriptions were written for neck and back pain. It's not completely on the medical doctors. I think the bigger culprit is the pharmaceutical companies with their agenda. But if medical doctors can open up the lens and really start to refer people to chiropractors, there'd be a lot of lives that would have been saved, a lot of families that wouldn't have been torn apart. And the truth is, the opioid crisis could have been avoided.
A lot of patients, they're sent to doctors for various symptoms, and they'll be sent to a specialist, and the specialist will give them a medicine that's gone through rigorous studies, which it's nice to see the studies and to be able to understand exactly what effect it has. But the problem is that the research agendas have been completely focused on these basically petroleum-based molecules, which are drugs that just treat symptoms. And they don't take into account the interconnectedness of the body.
We answer the why question as to why people get stuck in the rehab, why people have pain in an area. You can go to a medical doctor and get a diagnosis, but once the diagnosis is made, then the treatment of choice is anti-inflammatories and/or pain pills, which mask the symptom. And so what we discovered many years ago is that if a vertebra becomes fixated or locked for whatever reason, if that's not manipulated back into motion, over time, the local tissues around that nerve root can become irritated, and thus affecting the nerve root. Once the nerve root's affected, it affects the nerve control to those tissues. If it's a muscle, the muscle starts to weaken. If it's an organ or a gland, the organ and gland begins to weaken, which leads to injury and/or disease. Eventually, that muscle you've adapted to becomes the next site of injury, and then you're forced to adapt into some other tissue. So we go from one injury to adaptation, to another injury to adaptation. Eventually, there's an area there's nothing left to adapt with. So we end up with chronic pain.
What gets published in the scientific journals was a precedent started in the 1950s by the owner, one of the Sacklers of Purdue Pharma. And what he started doing was performing research articles that would basically be marketing pieces for his drugs. And what the rules are now, you can have 18 bad tests and you can throw those away. You just need 2 positive tests that show results, and they'll publish the 2. They don't need to tell you about the 18. So even the science needs to be looked at. I think they've lost the ability for blind trust. They've ruined their credit on many different occasions, and certainly through this last pandemic. I don't think we can blindly trust medicine or the vaccine makers anymore. They've ruined that.
I realized that our system is flawed, is broken. The pharmaceutical lobbying is one of the most well-funded lobbying team in all of Washington. We're one of the few countries that actually allows our pharmaceutical companies to be able to create commercials for the public. And they came up with a statement that say, go see your doctor. But they've already sold you what it is, so it doesn't matter what the doctor may or may not say. The patient is already going there to get something. People, through commercials, has been taught that these things are good things. I had a research department when I was president of Parker University. In the medical community, we found that over 80% of the governmental dollars go to pharma research. None of that money went to our natural health science schools. They didn't go to chiropractic school, they didn't go to naturopathy schools, they didn't go to acupuncture schools, they went to pharma research. We need to have a system that is able to fund the natural health sciences just like other countries have done it, and have proven that the true health of a system is a combination of the pharmaceutical and the surgeries that can address the urgent care, but most importantly, the 85 or 90% of healthcare, which is the daily conditions that we now call chronic diseases.
In the early 1900s, basically all the natural medicine, even chiropractors and osteopaths, were very similar back then, where they were doing a lot of manipulation and very much physical medicine to patients to improve the functionality of their organs and their systems so that their body could heal naturally. The Flexner report was very negative against all holistic and natural medicines. And it was an important inflection point in medicine because it was the Wild West and there needed to be some sort of a regulation. And it just so happened that with the Flexner Report and Carnegie and Rockefeller, they came at the right time, at the right place, but they missed the mark.
Commonly known as the Flexner Report, it provided an in-depth review of 155 schools based on Flexner's opinion of what should constitute an outstanding medical education. The Medical College of the State of South Carolina was woefully inadequate due to its poor physical facilities and lack of equipment, as well as its lack of full-time faculty and lack of money.
All of the different subsets within natural medicine didn't get integrated into our healthcare model because of this early Flexner Report, and so they basically threw the baby out with the bathwater.
If we look back into the 19th century, the mainstay of medicine in America was not what we call allopathic pharmaceutical medicine. It was herbalism and homeopathy. And homeopathic medicine was born out of early 19th century. Dr. Samuel Hahnemann out of Germany developed this healing system using substances from the natural world and converting them into safe forms through serial dilution and succussion. Homeopathy is a mainstay of medicine around the world, but has fallen out of favor, not naturally but artificially, with the adoption of drug monopolies. Even the medical doctors used homeopathy as a mainstay. In fact, the Merck Manual from 1899 forward has a lot of what we call botanical drugs and even metallic elements like silver. And when we talk about the liver, you know, the one thing in the Merck Manual that was good for the liver was up until 1970, they actually had coffee enemas as part of the Merck Manual. And it disappeared. Like, what happened? Doctors knew of this, but they had to eradicate and erase all reference to it, or else people might begin to look at modern medicine with suspicion and say, wait a second, you can't poison me back to health. The liver's trying to detoxify my body. What can we do to nourish it back to health? Coffee enemas can reduce the burden significantly. This is where, you know, allopathic medicine, as smart as they claim to be, are missing everything. So why do we look to the same people that poison us for profit as the answer to what ails us? We got to go back to the natural methods of healing that have pre-existed modern medicine by thousands of years.
Some of the aspects of these holistic approaches, fortunately, they're starting to make their way back into medicine. There's a lot of medical professionals that come to us and come to our clinic and shadow us and begin to bring some of the things that we've been pioneering here into their own practice.
We represent a population that didn't get results in the medical profession. They don't want pills and drugs, they don't want surgery, they don't want injections, and we're a drugless profession, and people can come directly to us. And this is where I think somebody like Bobby Kennedy and the MAHA movement is critical for people to start really looking at the natural approach to healthcare, because health is simple, disease is complicated. And once someone has a diagnosis, the plethora of pills and drugs, it's monumental.
Peptides are these incredibly powerful, small signaling molecules that your body uses to tell itself what to do. And we figured out how to replicate these. And a few of them work orally, and most of them have to be injected just under the skin with a tiny needle. And I have used peptides for the last 12 years. And some of them are profoundly effective for weight loss or to speed healing. In fact, I had surgery where they cut through the bone in my foot a few years ago, and I used peptides and all the other biohacks. I healed so fast that my surgeon in Beverly Hills changed his entire set of healing protocols based on this, because people can heal twice as fast, like Wolverine heals. This is powered by peptides. You can turn off aging, you can fix your insulin response, get healthier mitochondria, even affect deep sleep or the way your brain works. These are natural compounds found in the human body. A lot of them are, you can just buy them, and some of them are by prescription only.
If you've heard of Ozempic, which is everywhere, you've heard of peptides. Ozempic is a peptide. Or if you've heard of insulin, insulin's been used for almost 100 years. It's also a peptide. So these peptides, they're not these nuanced underground substances. They're actually naturally occurring in your body. And if you can mimic what's going on in your body and figure out where those pathways are blocked and where you need to open up that expression, that's where peptides are really magical, because you can actually get to the root cause. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Idaho, and I wanted to be anything but a rancher when I grew up. It was hard work, cold winters. It was so cold in Idaho sometimes you'd go outside and your nostrils would freeze together. And so I had an uncle who was a doctor, and I said, I want to be like Lester J. He's got, kind of the weekends off. He's got the boat. He didn't have, grubby clothes. And he just was a really gentle human. And so I thought maybe medicine would be a really good route for me. I realized from a young age that the body can heal itself. I used to run through the fields in cowboy boots, and I'd move sprinkler pipes, and these planes would come and crop dust the fields with Roundup, and didn't think anything of it. And eventually I was tackled in football because the only way I could get out of farm work was make the football, basketball, track team. And that injury actually led me to a surgery where I had both of my feet operated on. And I took a course called Mega Memory, and it was by Kevin Trudeau. So my mom got me these cassette tapes. I learned how to visualize, and I learned the power of what the mind was capable of when it came to healing. I was able to recover from a surgery within 6 weeks. And when I went back to the podiatrist and he watched the way I was walking and moving, and he saw the amount of healing that my feet had had, he said, you're more than twice the recovery speed of anyone your age. I know you're a teenager, but this is unreal of what you've been able to do. And I trace it back to just that capability of tapping into the power that's right within my own body and what's in your own body. And I learned how to heal myself that way. I was actually had done treatment for some concussions. I've had about 6 different concussions in my life, and I learned about a technique of using intranasal stem cells through a device called a sphenocath. And after I did that treatment, it was such a profound difference where I could actually calm my mind, and this was after years of meditation and all kinds of treatments, and I wanted to expand it, so I started looking into peptides. The beautiful thing that peptides can do is if we just look at the mechanism of action and we say, how does the body actually heal pain and get to the root cause? That's where you can see magic in these peptides, because the way that the body's doing it is activating its own peptide supply. All peptides do is turn on the gene, and then your body does the work. And I found that these peptides, they were able to move the needle much faster than anything else that we were doing. So we could, throw a lot of herbs or throw a lot of supplements at people. Sometimes they'd work, sometimes they wouldn't, but when we start targeting specific pathways with the peptides, I found that it decreased the time in which it took people to achieve optimal health by about 3 years. It was phenomenal. When it comes to pain, BPC 157 can help heal tissue, and it activates your body's own growth factors that help with more blood supply to the area that's been damaged. So if you get a cut, you can look down and you can watch your cut miraculously heal. Another great peptide called SS31. This is being studied and will soon be a treatment for Alzheimer's. And the way that SS31 works is it seems to have a protective benefit for neurons in the brain. One of my favorite peptides is called melanotan. And melanotan, I say it's the peptide that makes you look like you just got off a tropical vacation. With melanotan 2, what they realize is it's a peptide that stimulates the melanin in the skin, and it causes a little bit of a darkening of the skin color. And what the researchers have looked at is, does this protect against certain types of melanomas or basal cell carcinomas? And while the research isn't conclusive, the one thing that they did learn in their studies is they found that it activated a lot of libido. Certain men who said they've never had better sexual function and they didn't want to give it back. They wanted to stay on it. And they liked the way that their skin looked. If you think of somebody who has an autoimmune condition, chronic fatigue syndrome, maybe they've been exposed to mold or Lyme, then you can take this whole complex of peptides called thalamic peptides. And if you think of your thymus gland, that gland starts to involute as we age, and so you lose the intelligence of your white blood cells. But what these thymus-based peptides do is they can cause a re-emergence of this thymus glands. So you can actually get better white blood cells, you can get more immunity. We've seen peptides like thymosin alpha-1, for example, and what it does is it causes almost like a regenerative effect for your entire immune response. And if you look at the thing that we're all trying to do, and that's to stay ahead of aging and to not get sick so that we can live our life fully, thymosin alpha-1 is one of the best peptides to do it. There are a lot of peptides that have been FDA approved, but when it comes to having the peptides that are specific for human optimization and performance, those peptides have been very challenging to get, hard to procure. The compounding pharmacies have gone through an enormous amount of scrutiny, especially in the last couple of years, because of the policies that the FDA have tried to enforce on them and ask them not to compound certain agents that, from a clinical perspective, there's very little side effects, if any. I mean, we see more side effects with some of the herbal medicine and even the vitamins that we use than we do with peptides.
My PhD is in oncological sciences, and after finishing that program, I went to law school to combine my science degree with a law degree in order to be involved in biotech and healthcare related legal matters. Some of that lately has dealt with helping companies interact with the FDA in an appropriate way. Like everything else, the FDA has claimed broad regulatory approval, broad regulatory authority over peptides. And even though the protein is naturally occurring in our body, the amino acid sequence of the relevant portion of the protein occurs naturally in our body. The FDA says we need to be the ones that determines whether this peptide is safe. We need to be the ones that determine whether it's manufactured properly. And we need to be the ones to make sure that practitioners and distributors aren't making unfounded medical claims about them. Whether out of self-preservation or out of delusions of grandeur, the FDA at its very nature must claim broad regulatory authority. That's, in its view, its job. And I don't want to anthropomorphize the FDA. These are people. These are individuals at a regulatory agency. And so they're making the decision to take on broad regulatory authority. Once everything is considered a drug, you have an uprising, right? This is what you saw in the natural supplement space, is people got sick and tired of it, saying you can't call everything a drug. If you don't comply with the regulatory carve-out, you risk being found in violation of the drug laws. And for that reason, everyone's scared of their own shadows, right? They're scared, literally frightened that an FDA agent will come and knock on their door and tell them that they're doing something in violation of federal law by administering a stem cell therapy or a therapeutic peptide. What a shame, for American people to fear their own government regulatory agency, and for them to have the authority to come in and say, even though these are naturally occurring products, even though your body makes these, all of our bodies make these, you can't receive the therapeutic benefits of them because you're not playing by our rules.
We've been making peptides at compounding pharmacies for decades, and peptides are nothing more than short-chain amino acids. And those short-chain amino acids, actually where they discovered this was through Gila monsters, and Gila monsters seem to go long periods of time without being hungry or eating. And a scientist said, that's interesting, we should do an NIH study and research if this could be used as a compound to help treat obesity. Lo and behold, it was, and it's a blockbuster drug. And it's a blockbuster drug that, when distributed through a compounding pharmacy, is a couple $100 mailed to your doorstep. Why is the average wholesale price in America anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 a month? Because we are being bamboozled. We are being robbed blind by the very system that is supposed to protect us and fight on our behalf. our processed foods are causing chronic disease. You know, that all leads to deficiencies in our diet, in our lifestyle, and in our nutrition. And peptides are just another tool in the tool belt to help optimize people's short-chain amino acids in their body. And when utilized appropriately, peptides have phenomenal efficacy results and a phenomenal safety profile.
This is an important thing to realize, is that there's only two types of people in this world. Those that trust the FDA and those that don't trust the FDA. I think that it's important to realize that it's not just one or the other. The FDA can be both a benevolent or helpful agency as well as a bureaucratic, harmful agency standing in the way of therapeutics. Everyone's more than happy to have the FDA pull a drug off the shelf when it causes cancer, and everyone's more than happy to have the FDA shut down a manufacturing facility if they're introducing contaminants. But everyone gets really upset when the FDA won't allow doctors to talk about a potential drug or a medicine or a therapeutic in a way that the doctor knows or believes is accurate, but the FDA hasn't signed off on yet. So the FDA really is stuck between a rock and a hard place. It needs to act as a consumer protection agency in all aspects of that, protecting them from bad manufacturing, protecting them from bad drugs, and protecting them from bad actors who want to make unfounded claims. The problem is when you talk about therapeutics that our bodies are actually making, there's no risk that these are going to cause you harm. Our body is already making them. And if you're producing or isolating them from the human body in a way that keeps their fidelity, that are manufactured properly, there's no risk associated with it.
So if we look at the FDA's most recent egregious action against peptides, you walk away scratching your head because they don't really justify where the safety data or concerns are coming from. And the real answer is, and I covered this on Joe Rogan's podcast, what didn't get banned by the FDA? What didn't get banned are all the GLP-1s, all the patented peptides that Big Pharma is making billions of dollars a year on. And I don't even want to blame the FDA. In AI, we talk about bad data in will equal bad data out. If you have a skewed lens and you allow industry to lean on and impose and intimidate and bend the ear of our three-letter alphabet organizations, they're going to act on bad data, bad facts, and bad information. And that's going to lead to bad outcomes for the American people. And we see it time and time again, whether we're talking about the drugs that get approved or the peptides that get denied. So in one breath, the FDA is saying, we have concerns about peptides, but in the next breath, Merck has 200 patents pending on peptides. It's not a concern about safety, it's a concern about the monetization and the profiteering of these peptides. Peptides are short-chain amino acids. A buddy of mine has a joke, he says, think of them as Flintstone vitamins for grown-ups. When utilized appropriately, these are amazing tools in the tool belt to drive health span and longevity. And I really think there's tremendous value, like a peptide like BPC 157. The data is there. And even in medical practices throughout the country, those products have been used for over 5 years with minimal side effects. And at our practice, having treated literally hundreds of thousands of people through our compounding pharmacy, we've never had a major adverse event. So why would you swing the pendulum this other way and make these blanket statements and restrict accessibility? The challenge with that is you're going to create another opioid crisis. You're going to force the American people to black market products, and then one day Big Pharma is going to launch the exact same product that was already in the market, just like what we saw with the NIH, and they're going to bring these products, but at an exorbitant price point that probably the average American can't afford.
I look at healing as a journey. It's a continual process. Disease always, it's like this yin-yang tension, there's always health and then there's disease. And that tension between it is what creates this massive innovation. And there's two sides of the innovation equation that I've seen in my career. One is the innovation that comes through the regulatory patterns, and that's where the FDA steps in, and you see this with the pharmaceutical companies. The other side of the innovation is where it's more entrepreneurs like myself. I don't really care what what the big research says or the big studies. I really care what happens to my patients at the end of the day. I can have the best research and I can say this worked for 99% of the people, but if I don't see the same results clinically, it's useless to me. And unfortunately, we live in an environment where the FDA has overregulated a lot of the innovations, and they've really made it challenging to get really amazing medicine to the masses, and that's where peptides have been.
That is how these companies have increased their revenue every year, year after year for the last 5 years. Just United Healthcare's almost doubled its revenue in 5 years. They're not doing that by providing the American people with cost-effective medications. They're doing that by monetizing and profiteering off of disease and death, delaying and obstructing your ability to get a surgery, postponing your ability to get much-needed treatments, postponing our ability or preventing our accessibility to doing a deep dive into our blood work or anything preventative. Everything is geared and incentivized towards prescription drug care and making money off those prescription drugs.
I have heard so many times, the healthcare system's broke. The healthcare system's broke. And I want to be clear as day. The healthcare system's not broke. It's rigged. And we're the ones fitting the bill. If we look at what's happening in this country and we look at the chronic disease crisis that we're facing, and you peel back the layers to the onion, you realize that the cost is much more than the dollars and cents. And we could get into the dollars and cents. I could tell you that healthcare is the #1 budgetary concern for the federal government at 25%. It's in the top. It's the #1 budgetary concern for most states. It's the #1 reason for bankruptcy in our nation for individuals. But the costs are much more dire than that. They're paid in human lives, loved ones, friends, and family. This is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. This is a humanity issue. There is a cancer in our healthcare system, and it is insidious and spreading rapidly. That cancer is big industry, a broken system fueled by corruption and collusion. I have personally witnessed physicians unable to run necessary lab tests, unable to prescribe appropriate medications, unable to even perform investigations into their patients' conditions to uncover their root cause. We hear people reference President Eisenhower's speech all the time about the military-industrial complex, but rarely do we hear the second half of that speech.
Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. It is the task of statesmen.
I believe some of the ways that the FDA has enforced, putting certain peptides in the, category 2, which is we have serious safety concerns with these peptides. The data just doesn't really support it that we've seen, and so we've actually created a coalition where we've been pushing back and brought in lawyers to talk about the aspect of the 10th Amendment of the Constitution or protecting that client and doctor privilege, where if a patient consents to care, if the doctor has enough data to back it up and says, hey, this treatment, empirically based, does seem to be beneficial for the client, and if there's not a suitable replacement for that agent, then the FDA has overstepped their bounds in a lot of the regulation. And so I think the big thing where we could move some of the world's best medicine forward would be to create more of a clinician type research where it's a real clinician and real clinics who work together to come up with the best solution for the patients, and have that be just as valuable, if not more so, than these double-blind studies that we've been using for 100 years, and they haven't really progressed medicine in the way that medicine could be progressed.
The way the world really works is you go with your doctor or your health provider team or your AI, or, you know what, with your church. It doesn't matter. This is your right. It's your body. It's your decision. And just like you decide, do I eat the Twinkie or do I go to the gym? That is your decision. And then you hire the right team to help you, and you do what is right for you based on your genetics, based on your biology, based on your belief system. And if you do the wrong thing, we have this weird thing called consequences. You might get obese. You might sprain your ankle. This is called freedom. And it is the only thing that makes happy, healthy humans. And when someone holds a financial gun to your head to tell you that you have to do what they want you to do for your own safety, there's only one thing you can possibly say. No thank you, I choose danger. Because you cannot have freedom without the ability to take risks. Risks to think about scary things. Or maybe to do something that's probably gonna work, but you don't know. Because that's how the world gets better.
Don't get me wrong, this is not snubbing our nose at the FDA. This is simply saying the FDA does not have a regulatory approval process for these types of therapies. They don't have a way for us to be able to stay compliant with the expectation of consistency. They've shown over and over again they'll change the rules. So the people got fed up with it, and they went to their state legislatures and said, we need the state to permit us to do what we know is best for our own bodies. That's a beautiful thing for we the people to say, I know what's best for me. I appreciate your help in trying to take care of me, but I don't always need you to watch out for what you think is in my best interest when I know what's in my best interest, particularly when it relates to naturally occurring compounds and cells.
So I've been obsessed with peptides for over a decade, and what I've learned is it's not just one peptide that's going to make the big difference, but I've learned if you can stack different peptides on top of each other, that's where you get this what's called a pleiotropic effect, where it's not just 1 + 1 isn't 2 when you add peptides, it's 11, or maybe it's 1,000, because you're turning on multiple pathways and they work synergistically. One of the areas that I see the highest probability of just completely changing the experience that you have as a human are in these mitochondrial-derived peptides. One of my favorites is 5-amino-1-MQ. It was discovered in 2017 out of the University of San Antonio, Texas, and they were looking to turn off that metabolic pathway called NNMT. And this is a pathway that causes us to store fat. And in discovering this pathway, they realized that 5-amino-1-MQ inhibited that NNMT pathway, and it triggered the burning of fat, or what's called lipolysis, and it stopped lipogenesis, or the accumulation of fat. The other mitochondrial peptides that you'll see and learn more about are ones called MOTS-c, or MOD-SC. And in the animal studies, what they did is they took these old mice and they put old mice on treadmills, and then they compared the distance that the old mice could run next to young mice. And so the young mice could run roughly twice as far as the old mice. And they said, well, what if we did MOTS-c injections for 7 days in a row, and then we'll put the old mice back on the treadmill? And sure enough, the researchers watched and they saw that the old mice could actually run as far as the young mice by using MOTS-c. So what is MOTS-c? Well, if you think of the biggest muscle or the biggest organ in your body, it's muscle mass. And MOTS-c helps create better, healthy expression of muscle and muscle activation through that pathway of AMPK. In fact, what we've done in the research is we found that certain populations have higher expression of MOTS-c, and they also tend to live longer. And so if you can use these peptides and you say, well man, MOTS-c is it's activating AMPK, which activates a better transmission of energy into the mitochondria. What you're going to find is you'll live longer, you'll have more physical fitness, and you'll have better glucose disposal. So that means you'll have better metabolic function. All peptides do is they change the communication in the body. And I got into peptides simply out of my own curiosity. How can I help expand my brain health and keep that as viable and healthy as possible? And then started to share it with my clients and notice a massive transformation in their health.
Everyone wants to be healthy, and that's why MAHA is so important. What we're looking to do is say health is table stakes for everyone. We all deserve this. And some of us want to go beyond healthy and start developing to our very best abilities. So to do that, we've got to raise the tide for everyone. So our children become healthy again, which means that when they grow up, they'll be healthy mothers. They'll have healthier children.
What I ask this group of individuals today is to take off the blinders and look deeper into ourselves, into our institutions, because we have a real opportunity to affect meaningful change. The data and statistics that everyone's going to share today may feel overwhelming and at times hopeless. But I want to share with everyone one final statistic. 400 trillion to 1. 400 trillion to 1 are the odds that we're here today and alive. What are we going to do with it? The time to act is now.
Peptides have made a huge difference in my life. I'm not at all surprised that Big Pharma is working so hard to block and co-opt them. Now, if you're interested in peptides, I'm going to share 2 resources with you. First, in our official viewer's guide, you'll find peptides mentioned, along with the scientific studies and key takeaways from the film. It's all in the viewer's guide. Second, my good friend Reagan Archibald has generously donated a copy of his book, The Peptide Blueprint, for supporters of the film. If you haven't already become a supporter, if you don't already own the full film, just scroll down and look over the offer available to you today. It's a great value at a great discount. Tomorrow, we're going to tackle possibly one of the most controversial pathways to healing, stem cells. Stem cells have been the subject of so much misinformation and unfair government suppression for decades. Today, we may finally be ready to turn the corner on this breakthrough science. We'll go inside an actual stem cell clinic and talk to real patients, from retired MMA fighters to Army veterans, from people who just wanted better sleep and aging, to people who once faced a lifetime in a wheelchair and are now running again. Until then, thank you for watching.